So Dr. Machen, to just start off, and it's November 13th, 2020. My name is Paul Ortiz. I'm with UF President Emeritus Bernie Machen. Thank you, Dr. Machen, for taking time out of your schedule to be with us today. We're really honored, sir.
The honor is mine, believe me.
Well, Dr. Machen, I wonder if we could start, the focus today is really on the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars program. And can you walk us through how this program came to be?
I'm happy to do that. As many of you know, the University of Florida is a land-grant institution, and that carries with it certain historical precedents and responsibilities. And one of them is that we need to provide educational opportunities for the people in our region, all of the people in our region. And to that end, I have become the president in 2004, and we were looking at the profile of our students and basically trying to decide if we were getting the right mixture of students in order to be fulfilling our mission as a land grant. And you may or may not know, but 2 years before that, the then Governor Bush had precluded the use of affirmative action in hiring and education. So when I came here, it was very clear to me that if we valued and needed to diversify our student body, we'd have to do it without affirmative action. Actually, it didn't bother me because many of the places I had been had similar constraints. It's interesting that almost everybody is in favor of diversity, and certainly diversity is one of the keys to fulfilling the land grant mission. But I find very few people who are in favor of the concept of affirmative action as it's being wrung out in the press, especially you saw the ruling yesterday for Harvard. So when we looked at the declining profile primarily of African American students and the slightly increasing profile of Hispanic students, we made the quick decision and the wrong decision that the applicant pool didn't sustain enough people to be admitted from those groups. We just assumed that because UF had become much more selective in its admission processes, and since affirmative action was no longer possible, we were going to see a drop in those pools. Fortunately, our admissions office had good records of the students who applied to the university, and we took a hard look at just what kinds of people had been applying to the university. Lo and behold, we had a rich pool of people from all different backgrounds that had been applying. And in fact, we looked further at those who had been admitted and that still had a very rich pool. The drop-off came from admission to enrollment. We were not getting these students who had been admitted enrolled at the university. Then we went back into our admissions portfolio and took a look at what was happening. And no surprise to anyone that economic factors were becoming so prevalent, and they were keeping students who met all the academic criteria to become students here from enrolling at the University of Florida. So it was very clear that was the problem, and it wasn't one of going out and recruiting students. It was finding a way to matriculate and then graduate these students. And I had tried sort of a temporary program at my previous employer, the University of Utah, and where we took students who were the first in their families to go to college and who were of limited academic backgrounds and who met the criteria for admissions. And we decided that with the university trustees' support, that we would enroll a class of students and see how that worked out. We didn't really have the full program fully worked out, but we knew that there were students there that if the resources were available, they would more likely come to the university. So that was our first cohort. A lot of people were questioning that because, as many of you know, Florida is a state that has a rich state scholarship program, the Bright Futures program. All the students with whom we were interested qualified for federal scholarships under the Pell Grant program. So people were saying, so what's the big deal? Well, the big deal is it costs more to pay for the room and board to go to college than the tuition itself. And there we were finding that there was a $10,000 to $12,000 per student per year deficit in what we were able to provide. So we took our first class. We weren't sure how to make it work. An interesting little sidebar, I hope you have a good editing machine. You can shut me down when you need to, Paul. Right. But when I did the temporary program in Utah, I didn't tell anybody about the program. I didn't want to single out the students. And that was my first thought at Florida. Well, I don't want people to think that these people are being carried by the university and they would have a stigma attached to being in this program. Lo and behold, the thing that saved us was we took a large enough cohort. We took 300 students in the initial cohort. And because we had such few support resources, we bundled them together. So we looked at working together and trying to help them support each other. We had recruited faculty from within the university to help them. So we kind of came up with a family approach to running the program, simply because we didn't have the money to provide the resources that the people in the expertise areas said we had to have. So we threw everybody in the pool together. We decided to try to work this out, and we were amazed, absolutely amazed. Number one, the students were proud that they were here. They weren't embarrassed to be here on a special scholarship. They were proud. In fact, they asked for, and what has now become the standard ribbon, the MFOS ribbon that the students wear all through college, and then they have it on their graduation robes. So they took some kind of energy from the fact that there was a large enough group of them that were here together and that they were working together to get going. We looked at grades. We looked at academic progression. Everything was working out. These students were not, what you read about was these people came from poor backgrounds. They needed special help and all that. We didn't have the resources to provide it. Turns out they helped each other, and the faculty helped the students. So we knew that we were onto something almost from the get-go. Remember, every student selected had been admitted on their own merits to the university. So there were no people who were under the bar who didn't have the qualifications. The reality was we had lots of young people who wanted to come here, provided there was a means for them to do so. And that's basically how we got started.
So Dr. Machen, this first cohort of 300 students, can you talk a little more about the mechanics of that year? Because we don't have yet the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program at that point. What was there a name for it? Was there, like, who was instrumental in implementing this idea?
So the other thing that I felt strongly about is I didn't want this to be a financial aid program, okay? The financial aid is what got you the resources, but the life of the university is simply seen through the eyes of student affairs. So we decided with the director of the vice president for student support that we would put the program in student affairs where they could best help guide the students throughout their programs. And so that was step one. We didn't want it to be an academic or admissions financial aid program. We wanted it to be an academic program located in student affairs. We were able to dedicate several staff, but not near enough on a FTE allocation basis that you would be told you needed. We had just 2 or 3 students. And then we had a bunch of faculty who were interested in the program. The groundswell support for this concept overwhelmed me. The fact that we found secretaries who came to us and said, could we help? So we didn't find any shortage of human resources to help these students get along. But I personally believe the biggest factor was that they helped each other. The fact that they knew who they were. Many of them, remember, came from backgrounds that were very poverty stricken. The average student family income at the university at that time was over $100,000 a year. All of the students we took were in the $20,000 to $40,000 per year range. So they were at a totally different economic situation. And the fact that they could look at each other and say, I'm okay, you're okay. And if I need help, I can get it from another student or from a faculty member or from a secretary, was one of the things that I think that pulled us up by the bootstraps.
Nice. Dr. Machen, I wonder if you're talking about getting a really complicated enterprise off the ground. I wonder if you could share with us some of the real instrumental advisors you had, people that you called upon for help and assistance and kind of ideas on really getting this started. Who were some of those key individuals?
Well, it was mainly in the Office of Student Affairs that we got going. I think that those people got the idea immediately, and Leslie Pendleton became the director very soon after we got started. But she was just an employee in Student Affairs when we got started. And my problem was I had so many people wanting to be involved, I didn't know quite how to do it. So I backed up and let Student Affairs manage it. I figured they had a better handle on it than the president's office did. And they basically put people in place that had come to them and said, we'd like to help. And they said, well, what do we got to lose? Let's take a run at it.
Nice. And were there at the time, you mentioned there were some staff people, maybe not as many, but certainly volunteers. What were some of the kind of support positions that you were able to put in place to help the students in their transition?
Well, of course, academic advising is key. That we wanted, this program was not about getting people in this university. This program was about getting them to graduate from the university. So we felt very comfortable going to academic advising and getting them to help us provide the sort of overseeing the scheduling of the students' curriculum, just to make sure every student has access to academic advising. A lot of students don't take advantage of it and go their own way. We pretty much directed this cohort of students to use academic advising and to help let them guide them through the initial stages, because these students had no parents to talk to. They had no peers from where they had come from that they could use for advice. They were basically on their own. And that's why we felt it important that we give them the guidance that the university could give them, at least to get them started. As soon as they got started, they found, and we encouraged them to go to the faculty. And the faculty here are really overworked, but quite accommodating to students if the student takes the initiative. And one of the problems you have here is that students don't like to bother other people. So that was a push that we had to make. Go see your instructor. Go see if you can get some help if you need it, and go to the academic advising people and let them help plan at least your next semester's schedule. Many of these people had no help from home. Their parents, none of whom had been to college, couldn't provide them the kind of support that a lot of students coming to college as second or third generation can take for granted. So they were really out there on a limb. And we worried, to be honest with you, Paul, I worried about that more than anything until I saw the grades. And I said, oh my God, these kids just need a help. They don't need a handout. They just need a help.
What were the grades like when
the data? I can't recall the first semester, but at the end of the first year, the GPA of this cohort, no different than the general student cohort. So we felt that was a big sign. And the retention rate, of course, is another big marker. And at Florida, you track whether the students come back for the next year as one of the signs of success. And our retention rate was the same, right at 95%. So we didn't lose any students. We lost a small number, because they were confused and they didn't know how to work the system and they didn't know what they wanted to do. But it's a very small number. The students who had the chance to get to the classroom and to take care of business in the classroom, you see, they didn't have to work. And that was, for this cohort of students, that's very unusual. Most of them had to work their way all the way through high school just to help their families. We told them that we preferred that they not work because all of their fees were paid, at least until they got their feet on the ground. Of course, they didn't listen to us. It turns out that over half the students have part-time jobs. Many of them have them to send money home to their parents. But we really wanted them to focus on their careers as they were getting started.
When you think about University of Florida as a land-grant institution, and Dr. Machen, I remember during your tenure, you reminded faculty, the entire community about the what it means to be a land-grant institution, our historic mission. How does this program, how does Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars fit within the purview of being a land-grant institution?
Landgrant was founded in 1862. Remember, during the Civil War, the Congress had enough fortitude and good sense to establish the land-grant college institution so that each area of the country could have an institution that was going to be funded through the resources that came with the grant, to allow not kids that could afford to go to elite Ivy League schools up east, but kids could go to school around their home area. So it's not so stated in the document, but you understand once you read it, this is for the common person. And that was what the land grant drive was all about. We can talk more about that at another time if you like. But it was important to me that we didn't just take students whose parents had been to the University of Florida. That wouldn't accomplish our mission. We needed, and the other thing about Florida that's so interesting is the way the state changes its population mix almost more than, you know better than me, but one of the most heterogeneous in-migration populations in the country. So every year the state was becoming more diverse. And I worried that we weren't going to reflect that diversity in the cohort of students that were matriculating at the university.
Yeah. Dr. Machen, thinking about that first remarkable year of the 300 students, did you have the opportunity to talk much individually with those students, and were there some that really kind of stick out in your mind?
That's one of our problems. We waited too late. This is the 15th year. I can't remember who I talked to last year, Paul, to tell you the truth. But the reality was we were trying to learn from the students what they needed and what they were having problems with. So yes, a lot of the initial dialogue was, how are you doing? What can we do to help you? And again, this cohort of students is not unlike a lot. They were hesitant to come forward and ask for help. So we had to go to them to make it happen. And that's where having these personal, we ultimately tried to have every student have at least one academic counselor and one personal counselor. Personal counselor dealt with their life space. Do they have enough clothes? Did they have enough food? Were they able to make things happen that had nothing to do directly with academics? And fortunately, those people took a personal interest in these students and helped them. And I think the students bonded with them in a very positive sort of way to make up for the things they didn't have at home or the things they had to leave at home. So the first year was one of learning for us as we tried to find out just what we had. There wasn't a lot of data in the literature about what this cohort of students really was comprised of, what their needs were. There was a lot of bad literature about how they were disadvantaged and they needed to be treated differently and that they couldn't handle an academic load, et cetera, all of which proved to be bunk. Once you turn these students loose and provided the support system around them, you just had to stand back and let them go.
Dr. Machen, how did the program intersect with other maybe existing or even newer programs in terms of academic support? Like I'm thinking of the University Scholars Program.
Yeah, we didn't really overlap with that program because we didn't. I mean, they were doing their thing and we were doing ours. There is one alumni group that really preceded this program, and that's the American Hispanic Alumni Association. They had been in existence, I think, since 1990, and they had most of these Hispanic alumni of the university were first generation themselves. They were out in the world, and now they were finding their own children or friends of theirs children coming to the university, and they were pushing this university to find more scholarships for first generation students. So in a sense, they were the precursor to the MFOS program. And I got involved with them very early on. I came in January of 2004, and by June of that year, they had found me out, and they said, "Look, this is what we're doing. We want you to help us do it." And it began to dovetail with my own concerns about MFOS. So we put them together, and the University's Hispanic Alumni Association today provides scholarships that are part of the MFOS program that they help raise money for.
Excellent. Did you have, Dr. Machen, thinking back, I mean, obviously, I mean, now it's been such a successful program, you probably have to kind of think back into what were the real challenges in getting the program started. Like Leslie asked me to talk to you about, was there any pushback, any institutional inertia that you had to kind of, you mentioned some of this bad literature, for example. Were there any challenges?
That's one of the good things about time is you forget a lot of bad things. And I'll have to tell you that we didn't get negative pushback, although I don't think we got as much positive enthusiasm to get started. There was a lot of skepticism that we couldn't pull it off. Number one, the cohort was too big. Number two, we had no infrastructure. And number three, the cohort themselves, as I said in the literature, that they were just not known for what they could and could not do. But there is one nice thing about being in the office of the president. Not many people will give you a hard time if you come up with an idea that you want to pursue. So they said, okay, if you want to do it, we'll give it a shot. Basically, that's how it goes. But I don't think we had a lot of people that were sure that we knew what we were doing or that we were going to be successful. But it didn't matter. We were going to give it a go and see what happened regardless.
Yeah. Dr. Machen, you mentioned the importance of being a public institution, public university, and understanding the demographic nature of the state that you operate in. How does the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program over time, how has it helped University of Florida fulfill its mission to the people?
So I want to start with a caveat, Paul, is that we do not look at profiles from a quota basis. That is not the way the program works. We look at academic credentials, entering backgrounds of the students, not their ethnicity, but where they came from, how long have they been in this country, what did they achieve while they were here. We didn't pay any attention to gender. But after you go, and then the first generation piece was another cutoff that we added to the program. And it should be noted from the very beginning that Governor Jeb Bush, the governor who had abolished affirmative action in hiring, was the one who suggested that we make that one of the criteria. He was very interested in supporting the program, and he was the one who pushed the first generation idea. As a matter of fact, he is the only governor during the tenure of the program who has provided money in his budget to support this program. So he put his money where his mouth was, but he was the one who jumped on the first gen model. If you look at the way and then once the students are admitted and enrolled, then you take a look at what you got and you find the diversity breakout that you got. And there's no question that this pool of students. Remember now, we're somewhere between 3 and 350 per class per year now. So we have somewhere between 1,200 and 1,500 students enrolled. If you look at the backgrounds of these students compared to the rest of the student body, much more diverse, much more much more different backgrounds coming in. So, and in the sense that if the university wants to be more diverse, this program is helping us become so. I don't think that that was the only reason we did it, but that's the way it turns out.
Excellent. Well, I also want, if Adolfo or Marianne have questions too, feel free to jump in. I was thinking to Dr. Machen about, especially the early years of the program when you're still kind of experimenting, kind of feeling your way, having to deal with stereotypes about, who first generation students are and whatnot. Did the program have, you mentioned the outstanding work that Student Affairs did. And I also wanted to get a sense for, did you have any like special events for the students as the year proceeded, like check-ins, get-togethers, mixers?
Yeah, and again, I would like to tell you we had this all figured out, but we didn't. But we decided to start with a kickoff in the fall. So all the new students came to the president's house for get-togethers. Number one, they could meet each other. Number two, they could meet their faculty cohorts, and number three, we could learn more about them. And that turns out to be a very popular event. Here you imagine you're a first generation student living in a dorm. You don't know a lot of people. You come to this event, you go back to the dorm and say, oh, by the way, I just had lunch, I had dinner with the president tonight. And it turned out to be a positive for the students to be able to do it. One of the things that's evolved over time is picture taking. When I was doing it, and now Dr. Fox does it with me, we take a picture of every student who wants it. They don't have to, but if they want a picture taken at that first event, we take another picture at the graduation event 4 years later. And I've had mothers come up to me and show me the picture that they had. And then the kids take these pictures, send them to their parents, say, Mom, this is me and the pres. We had dinner tonight. Nice. And they show me that picture 7 or 8 years later. So it becomes something of an identity issue for the students to be able to connect. They also take pictures of themselves, and we watch friendships develop on the spot from that initial one. Over time, and Leslie can talk more about this, we found that we wanted to take some of the students out of the normal number. And we came up with what we called a leadership academy. And Leslie and her cohorts would pick 40 students who had expressed some interest in being involved in leadership activities. And we had some special seminars, things like public speaking, things like communicating with different groups on campus. And the Leadership Academy cohort became a subgroup of the overall cohort. Still exists, and we have separate events for them. Other things would come about as people suggested it. And this sounds horrible to me when I first heard it. But one of my assistants who worked at the president's house said, Bernie, would it be okay if we had a etiquette event for students who wanted to come? And I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, many of these students have never been to dinner parties where there are 2 or 3 forks on the plate, 2 or 3 glasses on the plate. We would like to invite students to come, and we will go through all the internal etiquette. And I said, is that going to be condescending? We got to be careful. And he said, no, let's just try it. Several had asked it. Very popular event, not for everybody, but for those who wanted it. We tried it. The woman is now gone now, but I think someone else has taken it over. And it became just another sidebar of the kinds of experiences that we were able to provide these students.
A little later on, the program transitions from Florida Opportunity Scholars Program to the Machen Florida Opportunity Scholars Program. Can you describe how that shift happened?
They did it without my knowledge.
Okay, so that was the question Leslie asked me to ask you. So okay,
That's not fair.
okay,
What happened was we had a donor who I didn't know at the time, who approached the foundation and said, if we give you X, would you be willing to name the program for Bernie and Chris? And he said, and the foundation cleared it through the board of trustees. They came and told me about it. I said, well, it better be enough money to make it worth their time. And it was a large sum of money. So basically, I bought my name the back doorway, actually.
all right. Well, as any educational leader knows, it takes resources to start and sustain a program such as this. And so, Dr. Machen, could you talk about some of the donors? You don't have to mention them by name, but some of the donors who supported the program, and maybe actually, if you wouldn't mind, give us a pitch. How do you pitch this program to a potential donor?
To be honest, the best pitch is the students, far and away. One of the things we started doing is starting with this Leadership Academy. When we would go out to alumni events around the state, we would take a couple of the students with us, and we would have them speak about their life, who they were, where they came from, what the scholarship enabled them to do. And then people were writing checks, Paul, before they sat down. I mean, it's an absolutely inspiring event. So whenever we can, we let the program speak for itself, and it's still our most effective fundraising technique. We've now graduated to where we have videos that we use, and we can send them on to a broader scale. Like I'm doing a Gator Club in Coral Gables next week, and it will be me opening the conversation with a little bit about how we got started. And then Leslie has a group of students and graduates. See, we now have the luxury of having 3,200 graduates of the program, most of them scattered all over the state of Florida. And so we will have a Zoom program for the Coral Gable Gator Club that features MFOS and the students and graduates of that program. And the rest, as they say, is history. Once I get the word out that the students can talk, I don't have to say anything.
Right. Wow. Can you talk about some of the alumni stories, Dr. Machen, that you've heard in recent years or months that are inspiring to you?
I mean, they just come pouring in, Paul. Leslie just sent me an email last week of a young scholar that's going to graduate, I believe, in December, in about a month. And the email came to Leslie and her assistants from the mother of this graduate. The mother explains that she was a single mother and had been committed to letting her daughter go to the college of her choice. And her mother was literally out interviewing for second jobs when the daughter got the letter accepting her into the program. See, the way that works is you have to apply to the university and be accepted by the admissions office before we screen you for admissions to the MFOS program. So this young lady and her mom get a letter. The mom is not home because she's out interviewing for a second job that she's going to take on top of her regular job to send her daughter to college. 3.5 years later, she's thanking Leslie and her staff for making it possible for her daughter, who's going to graduate soon, to go to college debt-free without having to be an unreasonable burden on the family. That happened just last week.
Wow, that's a really cool story. Well, I think Adolfo, you have a question for Dr. Machen.
Yes, Dr. Machen, a couple questions actually. So first, do students stay in touch with the MFOS program after they become alumni?
Absolutely. We try to build a database of our alums. Number one, there's a lot of networking that goes on in terms of if we have graduates now everywhere. We got a large cohort that's in New York, making that work. A large cohort in Florida. So, and Leslie is the linchpin for this, and her staff try to do it. But the students are encouraged, and they do um, sign up with their forwarding addresses when they leave the university. The other thing, Adolfo, you didn't mention, but I want to mention it, is that we are shameless in wanting to get these students invested in giving back to the university. And even though we've only been out there for 15 years, the data from the foundation show MFOS graduates give back to the university at a higher rate than the rest of the graduates of the university. That's a pretty amazing statistic when I think about it.
Thank you. Do students that graduate, do they end up staying at UF and do their master's or PhD programs at the university, or do they go elsewhere?
They're all over the country. They go to Ivy League schools, they go to the West Coast and everywhere. But I'll tell you, our deans are shameless. They come to the events that we have to recruit the MFOS kids to go to graduate school here. One of the best or the worst, depending on how you look at it, is the dean of pharmacy, and she'll send me a picture every year. See how many MFOS graduates we have in our class, because they're great. Number one, they're great students. Number two, they've proved their independence. And number three, they have an incredible drive to succeed. So any graduate program is proud to have them. We have them, I think, in every graduate program in the university, but they're all over the country, Adolfo. They're not just here.
Excellent, thank you.
Dr. Machen, what is your hope for this program 20 years on, after you've had this really amazing run? But how do you hope, what's your hopes for the future?
Well, the first thing is happening already. The university came to us and said, if you will work to raise the amount of funds you get, we would like to take more than 300 students per year. We know from our admissions pool that there are more students who qualify for the program than you admit. The 300 number is simply all we can afford right now. So this fall, the semester we're in now, we took 350. And the plan and the fundraising, and we've set aside some significant effort to try to raise more private money to support the additional 50 students. And if we're successful, we'll take 350 next freshman year, and 350 and 350. So my first goal for the program is to take as many as we can possibly take. And I think if we keep going, the program will not be self-funding, but it will become enriching as we move forward to do that. So 20 years from now, Paul, I don't know how big we will be, but I hope that the basis of the program is essentially what we have right now, is that you have to be the first in your family, even though what's interesting now is we have siblings of graduates who want to go to the program. Technically, they don't qualify because they got a member of their family that's a graduate. But we're sort of right now, we're blinking at that. We're gonna get over that. But those are the kind of changes that will evolve as the program matures over time, and I'm happy with that. But I believe it's very important for this university, who's in this state that is so diverse, to continue to be committed to having a diverse student body. And this is one of the foundational programs to help us remain a diverse university. So that is not MFOS per se, that's UF. And I want us to stay, diversity is a strength of a university. And I hope we can keep that 20 years from now.
Excellent. Dr. Machen, I want to ask you a policy question, because you began by talking about your tenure as university president at Utah and the challenges that or the terrain that's created, once you take affirmative action off the table. Have you been able to take the Opportunity Scholars Program, some of the lessons to other institutions, to talk to other universities about how you do this during this, this kind of political reality?
We have, and mainly as Leslie is she's the bellwether that's talking about it at the national meeting sites. But, and we are actually doing some experiment. We now have enough clusters of graduates from high schools in Florida that we're able to look inside them. When we started, the guidance counselors didn't know anything about the program, so they couldn't tout it to their upcoming students. Now we have enough graduates, and we're making an effort to make sure that the guidance counselors at these high schools simply make the program aware to a freshman in high school so that they know. That's what's so amazing to me about the current scholar cohort. If you had all the high walls in front of you just to get through life, why would you think that you could be admitted to the most selective university in the state of Florida? And yet these people who go through high school with not a clue about how they're going to get there have something special within them that makes them achieve so that they can get in there, And we hope that over time that we can make the program itself become a recruiting tool and maybe be a motivator for people. And I knew as a freshman that if I worked hard, I might become a Machen scholar and go to the University of Florida. The other thing is the other universities in the state are beginning to copy the program that we have. Not exactly. And you know how territorial universities are, so they call it something different. But basically, they're all doing the same thing, which is fine because there are plenty of students at other universities who meet the same criteria as this. So I think those kind of policy issues will just kind of take care of themselves as we go forward.
So Dr. Machen, you see this as having kind of a ripple effect on other institutions in the state.
That's correct. Interesting point. Somewhat disconcerting to me. I told you that Governor Bush put money in his budget for the University of Florida First Gen program back in 2006. 2007, the Board of Governors took the program away from us and split the money up between all the universities. So we won and we lost. Okay, we helped to spread the program, but we lost a lot of the funding that we had garnered that first year.
I see. I didn't realize that.
That's all. I mean, it's a historical fact now. We raised so much more money, we couldn't do it without. But the small amount of money we got at the state level is split among all 12 state universities.
Okay.
Quick question: is there a possibility, by any chance, that UF could use some of their endowment money to finance the program, or no?
We have. I saw the report. We already have our own endowment of over $30 million. The program itself, this is money we raise. One of the problems with endowment monies, Adolfo, is it comes to us with strings attached. If someone gives money for a certain purpose and puts it in endowment, the university is legally responsible for spending the money the way that they want. You see what I mean? But that being said, even though they don't use endowment money, the program is way short of enough money to be self-sufficient. And the university steps up from its operating revenues and fills that gap right now. So the university is our biggest and best partner, but we can't use other endowment monies. So our goal is to develop our own endowment. If you add to my 20-year goals, Paul, it would be to have a bigger endowment for the program.
Right. That's a laudable goal. How has this program personally impacted you, Bernie?
Oh. Well, one of the things that you learn in life is that the things that make you feel good at a certain point have nothing to do with your own accomplishments. there's a certain, after you reach a certain level of accomplishment in your life, another this or that makes no difference. The only thing that really makes me feel good today is what I'm able to help other people do. And thank God Leslie has the students write me notes, keeps me abreast of what's going on, and to hear the stories that are told about, that's why I'm so excited about the oral history program, helping to put in writing the stories about this program. It makes me, I'm fully retired. I got no business doing what I'm doing, but I spend as much time now trying to raise funds for the program as I did when I was working.
Excellent. Well, Bernie, we've taken a lot of your time. I know you are very, very busy, and we also plan to do a follow-up interview with you, if that's okay. A little bit further down the road, we'll be interviewing a number of individuals that Leslie has identified as kind of the key, founders and early sustainers of the program. And if there are other questions too that you'd like us to address in our next session, please just let me know, and we will add those to the interview guide.
Okay.
I will also send you the flyer, if you haven't already received it, of the about the internship in the spring. If you know of any students, they're just starting to register now. The structure of the program is we have the seminar. It's a 2-hour seminar. It's Mondays, 11:40 to 1:45. And then within the internship, because it is an internship, students spend an extra 5 hours per week interning with the Proctor program and learning all aspects of oral history. So help us get the word out.
I'll be your biggest supporter. I think it's a great program, and it's going to help our program get a little bit more firmly based. I think we've been running so fast, we haven't taken the time to document it. And Leslie's really the one that's pushing us to do that. So you all are going to be, the more you question us, the better it's going to be for us.
Okay. Very good. Well, you have been moving fast. I don't think you needed that motorcycle, Bernie. You're moving faster than ever.
We're having a great run. Listen, I'm here. I love talking to you, Marianne and Dolfo. I'll be happy to talk to you guys at any time. So just let me know how I can help. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Bernie. Best to Mrs. Machen, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.